So letting go of the narrative that you inherited and that's constantly being reinforced in less conscious spaces, that you are responsible for everyone around you and what they'll say and do and all this stuff, how they feel. Letting that go is a practice.
The way you feel more empowered is by every day making the conscious choice that in order to help the people in my life, I have to help me first. I have to take care of me and my needs in order to be the person that I need to be for everybody else. Hey everybody, it's Bianca.
And it's Amelia.
Welcome to another episode of Evolve Ventures, where we are helping growth minded humans evolve by breaking one limiting belief at a time. We hope you enjoyed the last episode, 297, Motivation Monday, how to declutter your environment.
Mhm.
For today, 298, how to be more empowered. We have done episodes similar to this in the past, but honestly, you can't talk about this enough. So
Mm-mm.
many of us don't feel a sense of control, a sense of empowerment, a sense of confidence and sturdiness and significance in our own lives. And it's, it really is an epidemic, and it can't be talked about enough because so many of us are really struggling with this. So
Yeah.
we hope that at the end of this episode, you will have some really simple tools to help you take the journey into being and feeling more empowered.
And the thing about this too, even if we do have that sense of empowerment or we experience empowerment, I remember Bianca, you and I, at this point, when this episode comes out, it'll already be like a month back when we did an IG live and we talked about motivation and finding motivation. And we talked about what we want is motivation, but what we need is a deeper why power. Empowerment is something very similar to motivation in that sense where you can have a sense of empowerment, and that is wonderful, and I want to celebrate that when you do have that. But sometimes, and like I've heard from a lot of people, that it starts to kind of fade. And even if you're feeling empowered, that empowerment can slowly start to kind of wither. And why is that? And my intention for this episode is for all of us to help us understand not only why those phases come and go, but also how to actually be more empowered, not just as a state, but as a foundational brick that we can all carry throughout our lives. So I think that this conversation warrants us sharing a little bit around
Mhm.
the inspiration for this episode. So I was on a call with a client, and this comes up a lot, honestly, in a lot of conversations where the client is going through a beautiful growth chapter, right? We're working through boundary setting, we're working through, at this point we've already established what the values are, core values, core limiting beliefs, core empowering beliefs, swapping those out and really taking action to be able to show to oneself that they can achieve, they can do, and they can feel really empowered within their lives. And while they're going out and doing these things, just like one of my clients, she's crushing her career goals, she's crushing her academic goals, she's crushing her mom goals. So she's crushing all of these goals and she's doing it really, really well. And not just that, but she's really honoring her mental health journey along the way and how important that is. So she's feeling all of this feel of empowerment, but because she has so much of a heavy weight that I know so many of us struggle and feel that is attached to our backs at every beck and call, there's the weight of being responsible for everyone else that holds that empowerment as if it's like a fleeting thing, as if it's sand put on our fingers that just drizzle through, something that we can't clasp and we can't hold on to and we can't integrate and embody. And so, just like this client, what we got into was how much is this core belief around responsibility. I am responsible for my family. I am responsible for my partner's feelings. I am responsible for the outcome of whether or not my teenager is going to be a good person, XYZ, right? All of this responsibility that's on her back that so many people, not just women, because I have a male client in mind that's a business owner, and literally it's the same conversation. So many people feel responsible for way much more than, from my perspective, they would benefit from feeling. And it's this responsibility core belief that we're responsible for other people's feelings, that we're responsible for X, that is turned up so much. That is one of the biggest factors that I see that lets empowerment slip through our fingertips, where we might have it at one point. We might be inspired by an accomplishment, but before we know it, the responsibility weight takes all of that off of our plate. And it's not fair to us. And I see it
Mm.
more often than I would like to admit. So, how can we kind of shift gears? How can we start to recognize what degree of responsibility do we have? Where do we even start? How do we start to begin to recognize that if we do have this big chain of responsibility for my family, for, whether or not my partner loves me, for my partner's feelings, for my friends and how they're going to navigate the next chapter of their career? Like, how do we know when we start to kind of peel back that responsibility weight? We're still going to be okay. We're still going to be loved. We're still going to be encouraged the way in which we are now. And as a result, we can still feel even more empowered. Because what I find, and B, I totally want you weighing in on what you've heard. But when we start to pull back and we start to actually shine bright and we actually start to do the things that make us feel and contribute to that feeling, that state of empowerment, we start to make the promises and keep the promises we have. We don't break them anymore. We start to release ourselves and let go of the responsibility for everything else in our life, especially the other people's feelings, how people perceive you, XYZ, right? When we feel that, there's so much of a guilt trip that we find ourselves putting ourselves through and that we interpret other people putting us through. What have you heard in your experience when it comes to specifically the guilt trips that we already enact before we can have any of that come from anyone, so that we stay small, so that we lose the empowerment feeling that we have, and so that we honestly shine less?
I mean, it's everything that you've already said, like, we get so caught up in feeling like everything is our fault and everything is our responsibility, and if I don't do it, nobody else is going to, and
Mm-hmm.
I need to show them, and I need to do this, and I need to do that, and it's because we've perpetuated this cycle for years and years and years. The one thing I do really wanna emphasize is this is not just a one and done. You don't
Mm-mm.
just get to this point of being empowered and removing the responsibility, and then that's it, you never do it again.
Facts.
This is a never-ending, evolving practice of practicing to put yourself first, practicing to not get enmeshed in the needs and the urgencies of other people. This is a daily practice, just like
Yeah.
everything else that's important. And the way you feel more empowered is by every day making the conscious choice that in order to help the people in my life, I have to help me first. I
Mm-hmm.
have to take care of me and my needs in order to be the person that I need to be for everybody else. So
Mm-hmm.
that is you're crushing it. That's why I'm not really interrupting. So keep
Dude,
going.
Hey everybody, I just want to take a minute to talk about my experience with the Evolve Venture Society. Um, they are a wonderful group of people who allow you to communicate in an open and honest way, and they're very supportive and full of positive energy. You can ask anyone for help. You can talk to anyone and ask for questions, and they're very supportive. And all they do is just help you to become the best version of yourself. And if anything, all I want to do is just learn more from this amazing group of people, and I think that they will help anybody who needs it, and that's the best thing that anybody can ask for.
it's so hard though, because that's, the first step in this is like what I found to be just fundamental for everyone's progress in this, and to really not just have it be like sand slipping between your fingertips. It's letting go of that narrative, because there's such a narrative that I find so many people, and myself included at some points, where there's a narrative that's not only inherited but reinforced, whether it be our gender, like just think of the mom or the dad role, whatever gender narrative or role narrative we have, that's reinforced by society, by the movies we watch, by the sounds that we pick up on in terms of music or podcasts or whatever. And then when we go into social groups, the reinforcement of those narratives. So letting go of the narrative that you inherited and that's constantly being reinforced in less conscious spaces, that you are responsible for everyone around you and what they'll say and do and all this stuff, how they feel. Letting that go is a practice. And I'm so happy that you added that, because the practice is in the day to day. And this is what I say to my clients all the time. And the reassurance that I see clients feel when I help them understand that, sometimes it can feel like a really heavy weight, because it's like, damn, are you saying that I got to do this every single day? And I'm like, absolutely. It is our experience every single day. We have to, man, let's talk about put the
Yep.
mask on us before everyone else. That is the work, right? It's true. And it's a lot easier not to. Let's just be real. It's a lot easier to just let this narrative run and become a victim of our circumstance, become a victim of our own inherited narrative, because then it's just a lot easier to default to taking care of everyone else and having us come last. It's a lot easier that way. There's less resistance, there's less growth in that arena. So, yes, it is a daily practice. And number one is letting go of that narrative. And it is a daily process. It is a daily stewardship that we owe it to ourselves to work on. And number two is recognizing this release when it does happen. Oftentimes I find when clients are in that first phase of, okay, letting go that narrative, I'm ready. Like I'm in that stage of acceptance and I'm letting myself release this narrative. What we fail to do is recognize how that feels in our body and tuning in and tapping into our physiological release of that. It's kind of like a wet dog. When a wet dog recognizes that it's wet, and usually wet dogs don't recognize that they're wet, but hang in here. But when they shake it off, there's literally weight that's come off of them. If you were to feel that as a human being, the wet dog analogy is you, the wetness is this heavy narrative. It's like a wet jacket. If you were to take it off, notice for a second how your shoulders settle in, how your body has to kind of reorient itself to your own, balancing of your day to day. Like the actual recognition in the release when you let go of this narrative and how your body responds is helping the psychosomatic expression connection, which is your body and your mind finally letting go of a narrative that has literally and physiologically in your cells weighed you down, meant you to be less empowered. You'll even notice sometimes I'll help clients point out your shoulders start to turn a little bit more outwardly. Your posture starts to come up a little bit more straight. Your body responds to what your mind is having always on the record and on the player. And thirdly is know when you end and where others begin. This is something B,
Mm.
you and I have talked about so much. And one of my favorite quotes from Brene Brown really speaks about this. The challenge that comes in releasing responsibility and setting boundaries is because we oftentimes do not know where we start and where we end. The edges of our being, i.e., what we're responsible for, starts to just get so enmeshed in the non-edges that are non-existent within other people. So understanding where you end, meaning what are your boundaries, what are your values, where do they start and where do they end? Where do you feel empowered and what are the things that are taking away from that? Is it the responsibility that you're feeling for your partner's emotional state because you decided to express a truth that was hard for them because they haven't done the emotional development that you have? Is it, okay, putting something else on your back, that your parents are aging and they're not aging well because they didn't choose to really focus in on their health, and now you're putting all of that weight on your back because you're watching them not have a great aging experience? Where do you end and where do others begin? And that is one of the biggest skills that is so difficult, but it is so meaningful to cultivate.
I have nothing to add. Well said. Just a little funny when you're talking about the wet dog. I'm literally thinking about the fact that I gave Aries a bath the other day,
Yeah,
and oh my god, he waits until he gets out of the tub
of
to
course.
shake everything off and get the entire bathroom soaking wet. And I'm like, I love you so much as I'm, like, shaking him. I'm like, "I love you." No, I'm totally kidding. But I
Pick up a
want to.
rag and make some use of that wetness, man.
Oh my
I see.
goodness.
Yeah.
Anyways, what is your episode suggestion? This was a good episode. Strong
Oh,
work.
thank you. Um, my episode suggestion is 254. Do your actions speak louder than your words? I know a lot of us
Mhm.
struggle with really putting our foot before our mouths or what we say we're going to do. And then, we don't actually do it. Meaning, yeah, I am going to take the action necessary to feel more empowered. Yeah, I'm going to go to the gym. Yeah, I'm not going to take on the responsibility for my partner's feelings and how they react. I'm responsible for what I say, what I do, what I think, what I feel. But the actions are very different. And I know a lot of us struggle on that. So that episode is my suggestion.
176, your self-talk needs some work. All right, everyone. If this is something that you struggle with, please, please, please reach out. There are so many resources available at Evolve for you. There's the right fit for everybody, so you can kind of pick and choose. All right. We will see you next time. Bye.
Bye, everyone.